Some places were meant to vanish, but this one refused to stay forgotten, buried beneath decades of frost and secrecy. The northern European wilderness stretches endlessly, a frozen expanse where snow and ice erase paths, history, and memory. For generations, locals regarded the area as unremarkable, a desolate wasteland. But hidden beneath layers of frost and moss lies something that defies ordinary understanding. No official records survived, and those who moved supplies left barely a trace, just shadows in the accounts of those who dared to remember. Some claim that men who entered the bunker never returned, their names erased from official logs. Over time, the structure became more than concrete and steel. It became a symbol of mystery itself. Its exterior gave little away. The entrance was a monolithic slab of iron, etched with symbols whose meaning had long been lost, corroded by decades, yet resisting intrusion. An 8-pointed star etched deeply into the metal. Architects and historians alike were baffled by the bunker's design. Inside, hallways bent in disorienting ways. Rooms seemed purposefully misaligned, and devices sat quietly, hinting at technologies far beyond their era. Every detail bore a deliberate hand, an intelligence behind the construction that seemed to anticipate the footsteps of those who would one day enter. Curiosity had always surrounded the bunker. Over the years, adventurers attempted entry, only to fail. Some heard metallic groans echoing from within. Others claimed faint, rhythmic vibrations that made the earth itself seem alive. Brute force, digging, or explosives were futile. The structure seemed almost sentient, an entity guarding its secrets through time itself. By the time modern investigators arrived, the bunker had become a legendary enigma. A multidisciplinary team of engineers, historians, and security experts approached the site with caution. Their instruments were advanced, capable of penetrating thick steel and concrete. But even technology seemed hesitant. Devices glitched as they neared the entrance, as if the bunker rejected observation itself. As the team prepared to breach the door, subtle anomalies began to appear. Faint readings of energy fluctuated unpredictably. Shadows shifted unnaturally in the corner of the eye. Even the cold wind seemed to carry whispers, almost as if the frozen wilderness conspired to protect the secret within. The anticipation was palpable, each team member aware that they were about to cross into something the world had never seen. The first attempts at opening the door were meticulous. The team's torches flared against the door's surface, tiny embers scattering across decades of frost. Metal protested with deep, resonant groans, as if reluctant to surrender its secrets. Each inch of progress was a battle, measured and deliberate. For the engineers, it was precision. For the historians, a confrontation with a past that had waited silently for 80 years. A sliver of shadow opened before them, revealing an interior steeped in silence. Particles drifted in the beam of their lights, each one a tiny witness to decades of abandonment. The smell was unique, a mixture of cold iron, aged paper, and something undefinable, something that hinted at decades of secrecy compressed into a single breath. The corridor inside immediately conveyed both familiarity and alienness. Faded schematics lined the walls, some partially erased, some indecipherable. Devices were stacked in precise disorder. Dials, levers, and gauges hinted at purposes no living engineer could immediately identify. The paradox was clear. The bunker was designed to preserve knowledge, yet defied comprehension at every turn. Subtle vibrations underfoot suggested a pulse, a rhythm underlying the concrete and steel. Instruments began acting strangely. Compasses spun erratically. Watches lost synchronization. Even thermal cameras flickered, unable to maintain consistent readings. Every observation reinforced a growing suspicion. This was no ordinary relic. The bunker behaved as if time itself were inconsistent within its walls. In the first chamber, remnants of experimentation were unmistakable. Rusted tables were scattered with notebooks, diagrams, and containers whose contents had long since disappeared. Historical documents lay beside equipment, futuristic for the era. Maps marked operations that had never occurred. Blueprints described devices that, according to known history, would not exist for decades. Every artifact was a puzzle piece in a story that no living person could fully decipher. Footsteps echoed, yet no one had moved. Shadows lingered beyond the reach of light. The air itself seemed to respond to presence, bending subtly, creating illusions that challenged perception. Was the team witnessing echoes of the past, or glimpses of something else entirely? Time, it appeared, was behaving differently here, distorted, flexible, and unpredictable. And then, as the first investigator stepped fully into the inner corridor, the faint glow of a circular device flickered to life. A device that seemed aware, waiting, and impossible to ignore. What happens when the past refuses to stay buried, and the present struggles to make sense of it? The investigators descended further into the bunker, leaving the initial corridor behind. Each step carried the weight of decades, every footfall disturbing air that had been untouched for generations. The deeper they ventured, the more the structure seemed to challenge not only perception, but logic itself. Shadows shifted as if alive, bending along walls at impossible angles. The flickering light from flashlights cast reflections that moved independently, creating illusions of corridors extending beyond reality. The second chamber revealed remnants of a forgotten operational hub. Stacks of meticulously labeled crates sat alongside machinery that resembled a fusion of clockwork and electronics. Dials traced patterns that made no immediate sense, yet some instruments appeared to anticipate the team's movements, their needles twitching before being touched. One of the engineers muttered under his breath, "It's as if the bunker knows we're here." Walls were covered with charts, sketches, and handwritten notes in multiple languages, some partially erased, others entirely unfamiliar. Certain diagrams depicted machinery designed to manipulate more than energy. They hinted at distortions in perception, experiments aimed at bending time, space, or perhaps both. Unlike the first corridor, these chambers were arranged to disorient, as though the builders intended visitors to question every assumption. A soft hum, almost imperceptible at first, became noticeable as the team entered the central lab area. It resonated in low frequencies, vibrating subtly through bones and floors alike. Electronic devices responded strangely. Voltages fluctuated, magnetic sensors tripped, and data logs produced contradictory readings. Every instrument seemed to operate under its own temporal rhythm. One of the most perplexing finds was a series of journals belonging to officers whose names had been erased from official records. The writings were clinical yet curious, blending military jargon with theoretical musings on time, causality, and perception. One entry read, "The apparatus must not observe us, for observation changes the subject. Yet without observation, nothing exists." The statement left the team unsettled. Was the bunker itself a subject of study, or merely a container of experiments? The corridor beyond led to a room unlike any previously encountered. The walls were lined with panels of mirrored glass, but reflections were deceptive. Observers noted images of themselves that weren't quite synchronized with their movements. sometimes lagging, sometimes anticipating action. It created a disorienting effect, a subtle nausea that suggested the team was already partially inside a temporal distortion. A table at the center held documents dated years after Wabitapu's end. Maps illustrated operations that never occurred. Blueprints displayed machines impossible for the 1940s. A photograph of a uniformed officer smiling at a console seemed familiar, yet the name was entirely unknown. Every artifact challenged conventional chronology. One historian whispered, "It's like history itself is layered here, overlapping in ways we can't parse." As they proceeded, the anomalies escalated. A pen rolled backward across a desk. A notebook's pages fluttered though no air moved. Even light behaved inconsistently. Shadows stretched longer than physics allowed, and a single beam could illuminate multiple spots simultaneously. The team quickly realized that documenting the environment would be nearly futile. The bunker actively resisted linear recording. In the deeper recesses, an archive of microfilm reels and data cylinders awaited discovery. Some reels contained sequences that replayed events that should have never coexisted. Meetings between officers long dead, machinery that hadn't yet been invented, and landscapes familiar, yet temporally displaced. Every playback forced the team to question whether they were witnessing recorded memory or a fragment of reality itself. Beyond the archive lay a chamber that appeared to serve as both control room and experiment site. A circular apparatus dominated the space, smaller than the one in Part 1, but more intricate. Tiny coils pulsed intermittently, synchronized with patterns in distant walls. The hum intensified, and several team members reported feelings of vertigo and temporal dislocation. Watching the machinery, it became clear. This room was designed to observe and manipulate, though exactly what remained elusive. Every step forward heightened unease. The team debated whether further intrusion was safe. Yet, curiosity overpowered caution. Each new anomaly became a breadcrumb, leading deeper into the impossible. The bunker seemed alive, responsive and conscious of its observers. It was no longer simply a relic of the past. It was an environment that challenged the very principles of observation, causality, and reality. And then, as the team reached the innermost chamber, the lights from the circular apparatus flickered violently, revealing not machinery, but something, moving that shouldn't exist, yet unmistakably did. If reality can bend within walls, can the boundaries of our own perception be trusted? The innermost corridors of the bunker twisted unpredictably. Unlike earlier passages, these hallways defied even the most basic architectural logic. Turns that should have been short seemed endless. Staircases descended into darkness that felt thicker than mere absence of light. Each step amplified the sense that the bunker wasn't just a place. It was a temporal organism, reacting subtly to those who dared enter. The team paused before a massive chamber, its entrance framed by steel beams engraved with symbols that didn't match any known language or military insignia. A low hum radiated from inside, growing steadily as they approached. Engineers immediately noted irregular energy readings, ones that oscillated with a rhythm mimicking a heartbeat. Every sensor indicated something was active, but there was no visible source. Inside, they found rows of devices unlike anything previously documented. Small, orb-like machines rested on platforms, their surfaces reflecting distorted images of the room itself. As the team moved closer, the reflections shifted independently, showing fragments of past events, glimpses of possible futures, and scenes that seemed to exist nowhere outside this space. The room wasn't simply storing data, it was exhibiting it, playing back moments as though time itself had been captured, layered, and compressed. One historian examined a filing cabinet filled with meticulously labeled folders. To the untrained eye, they were ordinary administrative documents. Yet closer inspection revealed dates that made no sense. Operational logs from 1947, photographs from the 1960s, marked with insignias that had ceased to exist, and letters written in the hand of officers long dead, all existing side by side in chronological chaos. The bunker was not merely a repository. It was a place where history overlapped, intersected, and folded in upon itself. In a corner, a set of monitors displayed live video feeds, but not of the present. Soldiers and technicians moved through the halls, performing experiments the team had only read about in legends. Yet these figures were tangible, their actions unfolding as though time had preserved them in a bubble. When one engineer reached out to touch a console, the scene shifted. The figures disappeared, replaced by a completely different moment in time. Observation itself seemed to manipulate the environment. A subtle vibration ran through the floor, now synchronized with a pulse in the circular devices. It was as if the bunker had a consciousness, a rhythm tied not to machinery but to temporal flow. Clocks carried by the team ticked inconsistently. Digital instruments recorded anomalies that defied conventional physics. Even their own perceptions of duration became unreliable. Minutes stretched and contracted unpredictably, a disorienting reminder that time here had no standard. As they advanced, the team discovered personal effects of those who had worked in the bunker decades earlier. A worn coat hung on a hook, untouched, yet appearing freshly used in its wrinkles. Journals revealed meticulous notes on experiments, attempting to isolate and manipulate temporal perception. Ethical considerations were carefully recorded. Warnings of unpredictable consequences, instructions for containment, and debates over whether some phenomena should remain hidden from the world. The sense of human intention intertwined with impossible technology created a chilling impression. The bunker had been a deliberate experiment, not merely a storage site. Near the back of the chamber, a large circular apparatus dominated the space. Unlike the smaller orbs, this one pulsed with a luminous energy, casting fractured shadows that danced unnaturally. As the team watched, the lights in the bunker flickered, and they caught glimpses of figures from multiple eras coexisting in the same space. A soldier in 1945 saluted a technician from 1952. Diagrams floated mid-air for a moment, then vanished. Instruments displayed conflicting measurements simultaneously. Time was not flowing. It was converging. One engineer reached out and accidentally triggered a panel. A wave of energy radiated outward, briefly freezing the team's movements. They realized that the bunker did not merely preserve time. It could influence perception and physical reality. Every interaction, no matter how small, had repercussions, making the investigators acutely aware of the delicate balance between curiosity and danger. Despite fear, the team pressed forward, compelled by the potential revelations. They recorded every anomaly, knowing that conventional science might never fully explain it. The corridor beyond the main chamber led to a series of small rooms, each containing fragments of history layered atop one another. Maps of military operations that never occurred, photographs that contradicted official records, and devices that seemed decades ahead of any known timeline. Even the air itself felt different here, heavier and charged, carrying the faint metallic scent of long-forgotten experiments. Footsteps echoed before they were taken. Whispers of voices lingered just out of comprehension. For a fleeting moment, it was as if the bunker had absorbed not just objects and documents, but memory itself, preserving it in forms only partially perceptible. And then, as the team approached a sealed chamber at the very heart of the facility, the walls themselves seemed to shimmer, revealing shadows of people and moments that should have been impossible to witness. When time folds upon itself, which moment belongs to the past, and which is yet to come? The heart of the bunker loomed ahead, a sealed chamber whose surface seemed to shimmer faintly, reflecting not only light, but a deeper, intangible energy. Unlike the corridors they had traversed, this threshold radiated purpose. Every investigator felt it, a magnetic pull toward discovery, accompanied by an unsettling awareness that the closer they came, the more the bunker itself would test their understanding. Before opening the chamber, the team paused to calibrate instruments. Every device behaved unpredictably. Some accelerated time readings, others slowed them to imperceptible fractions. The engineers realized conventional measurement was impossible. The chamber existed in a liminal space where physics, chronology, and observation collided. Even breathing seemed to require effort, as though the air carried subtle resistance, reacting to the weight of their curiosity. With careful coordination, the door finally yielded. Beyond it lay a vast circular room, its walls lined with thousands of small compartments, each containing artifacts, documents, and machines, all layered in chaotic harmony. What immediately struck the team was the coexistence of eras. Some objects appeared aged and corroded, while others gleamed as if newly manufactured. Maps and schematics overlapped, showing military operations from decades apart, some contradicting established history entirely. At the room's center was the culmination of the bunker's enigma, a massive, intricate apparatus that pulsed with low-frequency light, radiating a warmth that contrasted the freezing air of the exterior. It seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting subtly as the team approached. Tiny lights traced circuits in complex patterns, like veins carrying temporal energy through the very structure. A faint hum resonated in their chests, synchronized with the rhythm of their own heartbeats. As they observed, time's distortion became undeniable. Instruments froze, then leapt forward. Shadows danced independently of their sources. A dropped pen hovered briefly before striking the floor, then rolled backward, seemingly replaying its fall. Light refracted in impossible angles, creating multiple reflections of each team member that did not match their movements. The bunker was no longer merely a repository. It had become a living archive, a nexus where moments of history coexisted and interacted. The investigators spread out, cataloging artifacts and cross-referencing anomalies. One historian discovered a set of diaries detailing experiments with temporal perception. They described how localized distortions could compress or expand the flow of events, create echoes of moments that had passed or never occurred. Another researcher found diagrams suggesting controlled manipulations of human perception, experiments designed to observe how minds interpreted events outside of linear time. The ethical implications were staggering. The builders of the bunker had not only challenged chronology, but had deliberately tested its limits on those who entered. Footsteps echoed where no one walked, whispers brushed past the edge of hearing, and fleeting shadows appeared at the corner of vision, only to vanish when looked at directly. One of the engineers approached the central apparatus and tentatively activated a panel. Instantly, the room's energy intensified. Holographic projections erupted in midair, soldiers marching, officers consulting devices, machinery cycling through phases of operation, all from disparate eras, yet existing simultaneously. It was history unfolding outside of sequence, a temporal mosaic impossible to record completely. A sense of unease settled over the team. Some suggested retreat, arguing that tampering further might destabilize the very flow of time within the bunker. Others, gripped by obsession, insisted on understanding the full scope of the anomaly. As they debated, the apparatus pulsed brighter, reacting to their intent. One subtle movement, a glance, a shift in focus, seemed to trigger changes in the projections. The team realized that observation alone influenced the phenomena, reinforcing the bunker's paradoxical nature. To witness history was to alter it. In a side chamber, they discovered personal items of individuals long dead, worn boots, faded jackets, and personal diaries. The entries were meticulous, recounting events that contradicted known timelines. Some described experiments designed to isolate fragments of time itself, creating echoes of the past within the bunker. Others reflected on ethical dilemmas, how to record or preserve knowledge that could unravel the understanding of reality if revealed prematurely. The human element was undeniable. Ambition, curiosity, fear, and conscience all intertwined with the impossible technology. As the team worked to document their findings, a sudden shift occurred. The hum intensified, resonating in a rhythm that seemed almost sentient. Light bent sharply along walls, creating impossible angles. A projection materialized. A soldier, clearly visible, saluting an officer from another decade. For a moment, it seemed the bunker was not just preserving history, but actively replaying it, selecting which moments to reveal and which to conceal. Dr. Holloway, leading the investigation, stepped closer to the apparatus. The glow reflected in his eyes, revealing both awe and trepidation. With each approach, the projections shifted, showing possibilities rather than certainties, as if the bunker were challenging them to discern truth from temporal echoes. The realization struck the team collectively. They were not merely observers. They were participants in an experiment that spanned decades, perhaps even centuries. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed indistinguishably. The team catalogued anomalies as quickly as they could, yet every recording seemed incomplete, each measurement provisional. Objects carried out of the chamber began exhibiting peculiar behaviors. Photographs aged and reversed in sequence. Notes altered handwriting subtly. And even electronic devices displayed events occurring simultaneously across decades. The bunker's influence extended beyond its walls. The distortions left behind subtle traces in the air and snow. Reminders that time here bent to purposes no human eye could predict. Finally, after exhausting their immediate observations, the team began retreat. The chambers faded behind them, the pulsing apparatus dimming to a slow, steady glow. Outside the central room, the corridors appeared slightly altered, lengths subtly shifted, and shadows lingered longer than possible. Even the air outside carried a trace of the temporal distortion. The bunker had left its mark, and the team knew the anomaly's influence would persist long after they departed. Stepping into the frozen wilderness, the team paused. The wind carried no sound of their intrusion. Snow erased their tracks almost instantly. Yet a subtle vibration persisted beneath the earth, a reminder that the bunker was alive, aware, and eternal. The discovery challenged every assumption about history, chronology, and human comprehension. Questions remained. How many other installations existed? How much of reality was layered, distorted, or preserved by forces hidden from public knowledge? And as the northern lights shimmered overhead, faintly illuminating the icy terrain, the team realized that the bunker's secrets were not fully bound by walls, steel, or time. And somewhere within, moments defied chronology, whispering to those who might dare to return, hinting that discovery was never complete